Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance, and this resistance video is sponsored by contribution from Kayla, and here's her story. My name is Kayla, and I'm 26 years old. I am the firstborn of my mother, and for half of my life, I was the golden child. My brother, Chris, was the black sheep his whole life. He and I are only a year apart, but I grew up watching him being treated like absolute garbage. My mother broke up with my father when we were very young, cheating on my father and leaving him to be with my stepdad. She inherited two stepdaughters, Taylor and Laura. She also turned Taylor into a golden child, while Laura was the black sheep. My mother and stepfather also had a child, Mary, together. My two stepsisters would visit every other weekend, barring the same abuse from my mother by just picking fights whenever she wanted to. However, they never experienced the day-to-day with my mom was like. My brother Chris had a learning disability growing up and was diagnosed with ADD as a child. ADD runs in my father's side of the family, as he had it as well as his daughter Linda. My mom would also find an excuse to get my brother in trouble with him. She would call him stupid on nearly a daily basis. She would hit him with a wooden spoon until the spoon eventually cracked. You know what that's like. Had enough wooden spoons broken on me. She told him often he was the reason she was always stressed out. Yeah, my mother used to start smoking cigarettes and popping pills in front of me and then say, you're the reason why I do this. My sister and I always had new clothes, new shoes, and got whatever we wanted, while he wore clothes until he had holes in them and shoes were outgrown and had holes in them. Sounds like me and my brother. I love my brother more than anything, and I always saw the hurt in his eyes as a child, and it hurt me that he was always in trouble. I was also torn because I wanted to protect him. But as a kid, I thought my mom must have a reason to be mad. She wouldn't just get mad at him to be mad at him. However, as I got older, I realized it was exactly that, to feel powerful. She also used my brother and I as a tool to get back at my father. I remember being 7 years old and my mother set a scene up in a living room at night with my brother and I. The lights were dim, candles lit everywhere. She sat us down with a somber look on her face and told us, "I was going to tell you that your father died in a car accident, but I wouldn't do that to you. However, your father isn't paying his child support, which means he doesn't love you enough to help take care of you." How the fuck was I supposed to understand what kind of sick tactic she was using against my dad? She was so volatile that he thought the best thing for my brother and I would be for him to move further out to try to keep some peace. Because that's the only way he would have kept the peace. It hurts him to this day that he missed out on so much, and the sacrifice he made was in vain. He was naive and shouldn't have trusted the courts so much with no lawyer, but it was also the 90s, where I feel fathers' rights were not represented at all. They're still not. My father has voicemails today still of my brother and I crying on the phone, asking him why he doesn't love us. You can hear my mom whispering in our ears, telling us all the horrible ideas that our dad doesn't care. Whenever I visited my dad, his new wife would do her best to try to instill some responsibility and normalcy in our lives. She insisted on us doing our own laundry, doing chores. I can't even begin to express the gratitude and love I have for this woman today, because she tried to raise us as her own, knowing full well when we would come back to our mothers, everything she taught us would be reverted back to how it was before. She thought we were worthy of those lessons, even though she knew she would be wasting her time. My father would tell us how our mother was being manipulative. She was saying all these things that weren't true. I felt so confused because I was being told two different things. And I know as an adult, the only reason why my father would say anything at all was to try to clear his name. That he wasn't a bad dad, that he loves us. I know as an adult he really does love and care about me, while my mom doesn't love anyone but herself. When my brother Chris was 11 years old, he was caught dry humping my then 5-year-old sister Mary. That's not good. My mom had an absolute blowout and moved my brother downstairs near their bedroom and my sister's next to mine. My mother claims that she was sexually abused by her cousin for a long time, I believed. At a much later date in life, she told me that her brother also joined in on the abuse as well. But knowing my uncle and knowing my mother, it seems like she just wanted to paint my uncle in a bad light. It made no sense why, out of nowhere, she would accuse him after telling many people for years that it was her cousin. But I digress, because the cousin was an easier target. That's why. She never once sought counseling from my brother to try to figure out why he would do such a thing. She focused on my sister and shut my brother out. She called him an abuser, a piece of shit. Well, where did you think he learned that from? Somebody had to be doing something to your brother. Eventually, about 2 years later, my younger sister came to me telling me he was doing it again. She didn't want me to tell, but I knew I had to because it was abuse. My mother blew her gasket as suspected and filed charges against him. He was only 14 years old and convicted. He was put on probation and had to register where he lived. She destroyed her own kid's life at 14 like that? My mother decided that she can't have a sex abuser in the house, so she dropped him on my father's porch and told him essentially that Chris was his problem now. I need to preface again that my brother was never once sent to counseling at all for this. He never saw a therapist to try to figure out why he was doing the things he was doing, and in turn hurt my father's daughter Linda. My brother dry humped Linda just like how he did to Mary, and when my father found out, my brother fled to come back to my mom's house. My brother lived with my father for 8 months, and during those 8 months, my mother realized she didn't have her black sheep to express herself with anymore, so she created one. I went from the golden child to the black sheep. She found any reason she could to yell at me, call me names, ground me. I was 15, hanging out with friends, being young and dumb, and my mother would call me a whore for the pics I took with friends, call me an embarrassment to her friends at her car club. You're the embarrassment, not her child, not her... I just took it, never said a word, because I never wanted to make it worse. All of her friends would watch the way she treated my brother in the past and how she treated me and tell her she was right. I felt alone all the time. I hurt even more from my brother because I felt the abuse he felt his whole life. When my brother came back and my mom found out why he came back, she came down so hard. She told him he disgusted her, that he was a trigger for her. She attempted suicide twice, slumped over from supposedly taking too many pills. I'm fucking 16 years old and I'm having trouble taking care of her while waiting for an ambulance to get her. She made me feel like I had to push off whatever troubles I was going through to take care of her. It's a specialty of hers, turns out. I guarantee you, fucking your mother was molesting your brother. Absolutely. Abs, where do you think he's getting all that from? The way your mother is so needy like this, and your mother didn't get mad because he molested your sister. Your mother got jealous because he molested your sister. That's the difference. That's what you got wrong here. I promise you, your mother is responsible for this behavior. I promise you. When I was 17, I met my future husband, Alejo. We were both in the cars, and I thought he was the smartest man on earth. We eventually started dating, and he really started helping me by having me realize that I'm not crazy, that my mother was an unstable person. His love for me helped me begin to grow a backbone, eventually standing up to her, calling her out on her bullshit. The very first time I stood up to her when I was 18 and graduated from high school living with Alejo. I was supposed to take my sister Mary to a school function, but when I came home from work, she was nowhere to be found. So I went into my apartment in the house to relax. My mom came home and started yelling and screaming at me, calling me a shit sister for not following through on what I said I would. I stood up to her, telling her she can't talk to me that way. No one was home when I came home, and it's not my responsibility to track people down. She told me to get out of the house, even though I paid rent to her. It was raining out, but I said, fuck it, I will. I stayed out of the house driving around with Alejo, but he pretended that he couldn't find me for 5 hours until it was nearly midnight before we decided to come back to the house, and he told my mother and stepfather he found me. I didn't talk to my mother for days. A few days later, she tells me she's going to the oncologist because they may have found something wrong with her one ovary left over from her hysterectomy. I had never come across this behavior of hers before, so I dropped my silent treatment to be there for her. How convenient. She comes back chipper, saying there's nothing wrong, but more importantly, she found out our gyno, who had changed practices without telling us. It struck me as such an odd statement, but it was the beginning of something I realized was a pattern for her whenever I would give her the silent treatment. Right after I graduated high school, she and my stepfather split. Within a week and a half of him moving out, my mom had another man come over and drink with her. Interesting. From one dick to the next. She tried telling me why she and my stepdad were divorcing, but I told her I didn't want to know. The man helped raise me, and even though he was spineless and never stood up for his stepkids or his real biological children, I had a relationship with him that I did not want to be affected. She called me selfish and a horrible daughter for not wanting to get into their business. Had her friends text me and tell me I was being a terrible daughter for not wanting to hear about it. Over the years, she and I would fight, and every time she would step out of line, I gave her the silent treatment. She would at first lash out, calling me disrespectful for not immediately replying to her, then would go on about how she didn't deserve this treatment. She would send me links to her supposed mental problems, pictures of her self-harming. I'm promising you, because she's borderline. She's borderline personality to a T. To a T. That means she's hypersexual. That means she has no line, she has no limit, and she won't stop, and she'll destroy everything she touches. And I'm wondering if the uncle who got accused by the cousin is her brother. Because if it is, that's another key to the story. That would explain where the sexual behavior comes from on her end. Then eventually she would be sick. She supposedly had kidney failures. She needed to see, she's absolutely a borderline. She needed to see if I could be a donor if need be. Yeah, absolutely, this is borderline personality disorder. I recognize these cycles of hers and my grandmother. Her mother would tell me that it's just who my mother is, and I just have to deal with it. Yep, this is how somebody who's beaten down by borderline personality or disorder, no matter how wrong she is. Yes, borderline personality disorder. I would give in for the sake of my grandma. I never felt validated by anyone except for my husband. One particular fight over literally me not wanting to be in the middle of a dispute between my father and my brother, she influenced everyone to block me on Facebook and not talk to me. She sent me emails with veiled threats about how if I keep up that attitude, I will lose more people in my life. She was purposely trying to alienate me vindictively, right, because that's what the borderline monster does. That's what the borderline monster does. The borderline monster destroys everything. And people will bow down and give in to the borderline monster so they don't have to deal with that. Eventually, she would cry, tell me she was sorry, and the cycle would continue. As I got older and more conversations I had with my husband, it dawned on me that what she was doing to me, to my brother and my sister, was abusive. She abused her boyfriend, the man who showed up to my house a week and a half after my stepfather moved out, to the point of screaming at him on the phone while he was on his way to therapy to deal with his depression. He hit a tree going 70 miles per hour while on the phone with him, and died. She then put on a show that she was depressed. This is what I'm talking about. Dealing with borderline monster. They're monsters. They're monsters. Don't you see? They destroy everything. Everything. She then put on a show that she was depressed, making my brother, who was living with her, and my sister, who was in high school, feel like they had to put their lives on hold to once again take care of her. She lashed out at me for not getting tires for her late boyfriend's car, threatening to write a nasty review of the shop who I worked with, essentially threatening my job. This is borderline. This is borderline rage. I had hoped that maybe life would be put into perspective for her when her boyfriend died, but it didn't change anything. I knew one day I would cut her out of my life. I just at the time decided I would do it after my 60-something-year-old grandmother had died. The thing is, my grandmother is just as much of a narcissist as she is. Over time, I realized that I would do it when my mom would royally screw up, so I had a good excuse as to why I would do it. The excuse is never going to be good enough. Trust me. A year and a half ago, my mother suffered a heart attack at the age of 43 when I was getting the phone calls. This was the day before Thanksgiving. I honestly didn't believe she was having a heart attack. My mom was telling me about how she was having some arm pain a few days prior, but with how often she lied about being sick, I didn't believe anything she said. It wasn't until my grandmother told me that my mother was going to have triple bypass surgery that I realized it was legitimate. I honestly didn't really feel like seeing my mother at her surgery, but my grandma all but forced me to go with her. My mom's new boyfriend was going to be there, and he was just as much of a jackass as my mom is. I went. I supported my mom during her recovery. My mom moved an hour and a half away from me, so I visited her once after she came home. I also had a very close friend going through a miscarriage, so I was supporting my friend as well. I had hoped that maybe this year near-death experience would change her perspective on life. Guess what? It didn't. Of course it didn't. My girl, Virginia, only got worse after her open heart surgery. Listen, when they're faced with death and mortality, they only get worse and worse. They have to find somebody to blame for everything. Everything has to be made up to them. They can process nothing, these borderlines. Nothing. They are monsters who are out to destroy everything in their path, including themselves. How does she need a triple bypass at 43? How fat is she? 43? She never exercised? Was she eating cigarettes? Like, what is she doing? I had hoped maybe this near-death experience would change her perspective on life, but guess what? It didn't. My mom smoked her entire life and used to be proud of it. Once she had surgery, she said she would never touch a cigarette again. Within 2 months, she went back to smoking, saying that her doctor approved it because she was so stressed out. No God doctor is going to say that, but I let it go. They will just lie and lie and lie. A year ago in April, my mom started up with her bullshit, calling me one night with no clear motive as to what she wanted to talk about. That's when they're looking for a fight. That's when the borderline is looking, boy. She always has a purpose in calling me. She wanted something for me. Somehow we got onto the topic of making decisions in life, and I told her that I make my decision based on how I feel, not how others feel. The next day at work, she sent me a massive text wave about how I hurt her feelings. This is it. How I hurt her feelings by saying that I don't make decisions based on other people. It's also regular occurrence for her to send me insane text messages at work, causing me to be stressed out. And I felt the straw literally break inside me. I can't even begin to describe it, but it felt like a huge sigh in my brain, and I just had enough. I decided that day that even though she didn't do anything to royally screw up, I was going to go no contact. Because, look, it's never the right answer, no matter what. Because no matter what it is, you would have decided you would have gone no contact over a singular incident. It had been turned around against you. You'd have been gaslighted over it and been made to be you're crazy, or you're the problem, or you got your grandmother, you got your whole family going against you here. There was no incident. There's no getting through to this. This is a borderline monster. There's no incident that you can just say, oh, this is the one that I'm going to be able to break contact with. Hell no. You're going to be gaslighted regardless. I made this decision by myself, never seeking any kind of resource through therapy. I didn't know about channels such as yours for narcissistic abuse survivors. It was terrifying because I didn't know anyone who had done this before. I wrote her an email calling her out on everything she had done to me in the most respectful, calm way possible, and I sent it to her 3 days after her messages to me. I called my grandmother to let her know what I was doing, and she told me if she dies because you are doing this, I'm not going to be happy. You got to cut your fucking grandma. They all got to go. They all got to go. They all got to go. There's no good people here, Kayla. Your grandmother's the source here. Your grandmother's the mothership. What are you gonna cut it? What do you think? You're just gonna shoot off one of the satellite ships? You still got the Death Star out there. You got to cut off from all of it, light speed, and go. I was a mess that week, but my resolve came quickly back because all my mother replied to me was if she could respond, because what I said was inaccurate. I blocked her on all social media sites, blocked her phone number. I blocked her email and set up a fake kickback if she did try to email me. My brother and her have a strange relationship. He is always trying to win her favor. Like, you think they got a strange relationship? I told you why they got a fucking strange relationship. I'm telling you why they have a strange relationship. It's all fits. He's always trying to win her favor, and sometimes she uses that to her advantage. My brother tried throwing me and my father under the bus after a visit with him and my father's family in Kansas. My brother had moved out of my mother's house and with my father's family, and then eventually moved in with a girlfriend. What about his abuse? Like, what about that? Has that been taken care of? My mom would talk so much shit about me online. My husband didn't block her or cut off contact. For whatever reason, my mom did not try to mess with my husband, and he just added fuel to the fire. My brother is not the boy I used to know. He looked cold, calculating, and just overall seemed off. Yeah, that's what your mother sexually abusing you will do to you. How do you think, like, Norman Bates and, like, is that kind of like that with your brother? It all fits. After that visit, I also decided to go no contact with him as well, because he just turned out to be the same person as he is, and he's dangerous. 4 months after going no contact, I decided to start seeing a therapist. At my job, I was inconsistent. I would be on my game and then I would slack off. I snapped at my husband sometimes for no reason, and I couldn't understand why I was feeling the way I was. Within 2 months, I was feeling so much better. I can say now I am very efficient at my job and overall happier. I still need to see the therapist as I go once a month because I am still dealing with all the volatile garbage that I witnessed and dealt with my whole life. My grandmother doesn't get the message that I will never never get in contact with my mother again. She recently tried some mind game shit that turned me off so much that I honestly don't see that relationship for sustaining more than 2 years. Why 2 years? You're still looking for the right time for no contact when it was 10 years ago. My mom has found my cousin as another victim to attack, manipulating information out of her with abuse she suffered from previous boyfriends, and has actually said that she will hold it over her just to get what she wants. When I found out about that, it made me sick. As someone who claims she was sexually abused, I would imagine you wouldn't hold that kind of thing over someone's head. You would if you were a sexual abuser yourself and you were trying to cover up for the family secret now, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? My sister Taylor has told me that my mother has told her in the past she wonders who she wants to get mad at today. Her mom, me, Chris, which further makes me believe she's sociopathic. She's borderline personality disorder. She can't feed the monster enough. The borderline narcissist can't feed the monster enough. I'm still dealing with the guilt of not being able to protect Chris as a child, knowing he could have turned out differently had my mom not destroyed him before ever having a chance. And you need to understand how your mom destroyed him. He's dangerous, she's dangerous, your grandmother's dangerous. Quite honestly, I think your uncle's dangerous, and I think your whole family's dangerous. My husband told me that not only is he going no contact for good for me mentally. My husband told me that not only is going no contact good for me mentally, but I also owe it to my siblings. My sister Mary still lives with her, feeling like she's obligated to take care of her. I owe it to them to hold her accountable because I am sure it raises questions with the people she meets. It hurts me that I felt I had to go no contact. I wish I never had to make that choice. I feel guilt sometimes that I did, but I never have been more proud of myself for putting myself first once. Thank you for having this channel and for helping those who have suffered narcissistic abuse. I also want to thank you for spending the time and reading this long email. I hope my story helps people in the future. Thank you, Kayla. Well, couple things here, Kayla. Understand how your brother got to be the way he is. Okay? Understand your mother's a sociopath. Your mother has severe severe borderline personality disorder with histrionic tactics. And that's where all the sickness and I'm dying and all this, even though she's smoking 2 packs a day and doing what she's doing. The promiscuity, the accusations, it all fits. Your brother acting out on other girls. Your cousin then turning around and accusing your uncle, who if that uncle is your mom's sister, then I'm sorry. Like, there's your answer to all of it. They all need to go. All of them. All of them. All of them. Your siblings who are not, you can try to save. Your grandmother needs to go. Because your mother's such a monster that they will throw, anybody who deals with her will just give in to her so they don't have to deal with the wrath. Because your mother's a borderline monster. Your mother is a borderline monster whose hunger can't be satisfied. Period. So I hope that helps. Thank you, Kayla, for your contribution and your story. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comments section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, or a Facebook live chat, or you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it successful, growing, and expanding, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you guys. Without you, all of this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been The Narcissistic Resistance.